Good evening. Welcome to the PoliticIt podcast. We've got Greg Hughes here tonight, which is fabulous. It's been a while, Greg. We haven't talked for quite a while.
I've missed it. This is where everything happens. Is right here. This table right here with you.
So you're running for Congress.
I am. It was it's very sad. I think Congressman Chris Stewart has been phenomenal. He's a phenomenal member of Congress for his district, for our state, and even nationally. He's been an important voice. I know these health reasons of his wife are absolutely critical. He's putting his family first, as he should. But that's a big loss for our state, and it comes at a time in a mid-vacancy where we can't afford to not have representation in the state, and they have a razor-thin majority in the U.S. Congress, so that has to be quickly filled.
Right.
So all those things just came out of nowhere.
I know we're meeting on Wednesday to talk about this issue, right?
And so how
do we get this done?
If you talked to me 2 weeks ago, I would have never in a million years thought any of this had happened. I'd been a public servant for a long time, but I thought that season had passed. I got to tell you, I looked at that, and it feels more like enlisting in the military, where I know it's not going to be fun. I don't do it because I think it's a holiday. I really am concerned about our country, and I feel grateful for the liberty I've enjoyed and the life I've had and the family I've been able to raise. I feel a duty because of that, but then I'm concerned. I am genuinely concerned about the trajectory of this country and that Congress. We cannot, if we lose Chris Stewart, there are big shoes to fill, but we can't lose ground. And I looked at the field of people that were running, and I just felt there's some people I liked it, but I don't know if they can win. And there's some people that I see that I don't think are going to even come close to filling Chris Stewart's shoes. And so I put my hat in, and we'll see what happens. It's a quick pace, but I think my legislative experience and a lot that I've experienced along the way, I'm ready to lean in and give it a shot.
So you don't live in the district right now.
I don't.
That's going to be something.
It is now,
up, right?
It is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because when I heard about this vacancy, my mind didn't go to me at all. I was actually looking at people that would live in the district, good county commissioners, public servants that have done great things and would represent the district
you
well.
And Victor Iverson. I mean,
yes,
in the governor's race.
Exactly. I mean, that's the kind of person you would want. Victor doesn't want to run, but because I asked him, but my take was I saw some people that I thought could be very good. But I worried that as I saw the field filling up, or at least names that were being rumored to run, I worried that they might not be able to win. And then I saw some names where I worried that if they won, it wouldn't serve the state the way we have been served. And so I found out in that period where I was watching this that 2 of our 4 members of Congress have not lived in their district, and Congressman Chaffetz before that had not. So there's at least, and then the names that we're filing. They were not all coming from the 2nd district. So I thought, well, as I'm looking at the landscape, as I'm looking at all this, I'm seeing that Utah's history with whether they live in a district or not. It's not the deal killer by itself. But here's where I would say I would be very careful. I'm not saying that I know why it's important to have someone who lives in your district. You don't want to feel disconnected. You don't want someone representing you who's disconnected from your community. So what I'm asking delegates and ultimately voters to consider is a track record of public service that is not disconnected from the 2nd Congressional District in terms of the issues on lands, water, up here growth in the Wasatch Front of Salt Lake County, the portion in Salt Lake County and Davis County. I think I have a body of work as a public servant, and I campaigned on these things. 7 of the 10 counties we won when I ran for governor are in this congressional district, 7 of them. And I think I won those because I could connect, even though I'm not a rural person myself. I have been working on those issues for a long, long time. So zip codes are important. I'm not saying they're not. But I would ask the people making this decision, delegates and voters, to look at my track record, not the rhetoric, but what I've done, and weigh that as well in terms of someone that you would want to represent you and your issues in Washington.
So how do you fill Chris Stewart's shoes?
You don't. First off, you got to know you're not going to fill his shoes. The man has done such a great job. He's even helped constituents when I was a public servant, not living in his district, and had constituents who had unique issues related to the military or something. Congressman Stewart would help where he could, when he could, and it really didn't. So I've seen that level of public service from him, and I don't know that I can. But what I can promise you is I'm not going to go backwards from the work he's done. I'm not going to slow down. When you talk about the issues that they have been confronting in all of the second district, I just spoke with a mayor from Centerville and Davis County, and the water infrastructure that they are looking. The federal government used to have a very strong role in transportation infrastructure, water infrastructure. Congressman's working on some of that here in Davis County. I think I have a track record to show I wouldn't slow down on those issues. I would work on the very issues he's working on. And I've heard so many good stories of how he stayed in touch with the constituents, public servants, or even just the average person. And so that's an example. That's something that I would never want to take away from the people in the second district and would want to be a part of.
So these, looking back in Washington, I mean, we've had these modern monetary theorists in charge for a while here. They basically say we can deficit spend as much as we want as long as we're the default currency. And, the assumption behind that was we weren't going to have a lot of inflation from that.
Yeah.
And you look at what's going on now. What could you do to help to kind of pull some of that back?
Well, I'll give you a good example. There is zero fiscal discipline in Congress. They don't even get together to pass a budget. They do these supplemental bills. They don't put a budget together. They don't pass it. You have to act like a legislative branch, and you cannot see the runaway spending that's going on right now and think that that's just going to be good going forward. It's not sustainable. What you do as a state lawmaker, and what I appreciate, and I served in the legislature, is that we have a debt limit as a state on how much we could bond or borrow. We don't even get within 80% as a state within that debt limit. Every single time the United States hits their debt ceiling, they bump it up. I don't even know what the practical meaning of a debt ceiling is. If every single time you hit that ceiling, you just immediately raise it up.
So how can you change that, though?
You can't do it by yourself. Legislative body, as you know, it's a game of addition. It's an effort of addition, not subtraction. You got to get the votes. You got to get the votes in committee and on the floor, and you have to keep getting that. The Republicans don't enjoy large majorities anywhere. They have 5-member majority, maybe one of the thinnest majorities in the U.S. House of Representatives ever. The Democrats are running the Senate and the White House. We have got to be a strong voice on fiscal discipline, pointing out how inflation is not a number. It is crushing people's lives right now in ways that it's not humane. We have to do that because we have to see those numbers grow. But ultimately, Senator, what you have to do is you have to have bills instead of what you saw with the debt limit deal this time, which you can argue might have been good. It's not good. It's still when you're in a hole, you got to quit digging. It's still digging. And so you have to be able to build your numbers, build your coalitions, and you have to be able to get to a place where you can reasonably argue for a much more sane, because it's impacting every American. I don't care what your political affiliation is. You are not getting through with the way inflation is crushing your household income, your cost for food, your cost for fuel, anything that you've done in your life. It is changed dramatically just within the last 3 years. So I think we talk about that more. We quit talking about stats. We quit talking about the 7% or 5%. We talk about how people's lives are being harmed by the decisions that Washington, D.C. is making.
So what are some of those kitchen table issues that people...
Well, I'll tell you, the spending that's created this inflationary cost that's really taking money out of paychecks. Your paycheck is worth less today than it was last year, and it's going the wrong direction. That's a critical issue. But how about this border? We don't have one. There is no actual border, I think, being enforced at all. The drug cartels, the drug trafficking, the human trafficking happening, they've got a supply chain that is better than any company, country, you name it, in any port around the world. Those cartels are enjoying a profit at the expense of human beings like we've never seen before. And I think if you look at the law enforcement side of Utah, that I-15 corridor, we haven't even begun to feel the public safety issues that we are going to feel because of an order that is fundamentally just not there. And we're seeing that the incursions and the illegal aliens coming through at the high rate they are, with the help of cartels and sometimes with the help of the current administration.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, I was down at the border down at McAllen, Texas with AFP, and it was interesting to watch what was going on. And I came away saying, well, the cartels run our border. We don't run our border.
And that's not an exaggeration, and it is the fundamental truth. But how many people know it? I look at this thin majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, and apparently America is fine with Democrats, or Republicans would enjoy a larger majority. We have got to start connecting and telling people that this is not going to last, folks. We're not going to you can't keep doing what's happening now and expect to have the country that we've enjoyed and that we've enjoyed our liberties and our ability to self-determine our lives. You can't keep things the way they are, and we just have to speak up. I'm afraid there's a lot of fear right now. Fear to speak up. Shaming. If you say anything different than this kind of leftist social engineering, world that's going on, let's face it, that border's empty, not being enforced because there's a Democrat Party that wants to create a new generation of voters that will keep them in power for having let them in, and put them in power for generations to come. That's at the core of what's happening there. But we have to talk about it and be okay to talk about it and not accept the left's or the regime media's. You suffer from moral failings if you bring this up. You suffer from racism or something else if you bring it up. It is impacting people's lives on so many, economic, public safety, you name it. And we have to be able to talk about it. I think I'm built for that. I think I'm ready to talk about it. I think we're ready to build coalitions and help work against it. And that segues, Senator, into our schools. Okay, my kids are now young adults, so they're out of our schools. I don't know what to say about drag shows inside of our schools. I don't know what to say about some of the books and the images in those books and what is printed inside those books that are available for children, elementary, middle school, high school, things that...
Yeah, when we were working on that book ban bill, we, going into the caucus, we actually put those books in brown paper bags.
Yeah.
And everybody said, don't take those out onto the floor where people can see them. And we're book banners, right? For that.
This should be neutral territory for Americans and for Utahns. And this is the standard that I don't know how anyone can argue against. If you can't take a book and speak about, read its content on the radio or on television or in a public hearing, it shouldn't be available for children. I don't know why that's counterintuitive for anyone. If you can't have that book on the floor of the state Senate, how in the world is it in front of children on any level? That has to be a bright line. And I'm going to tell you, not long ago, I don't know anyone with a straight face that would have argued that premise. But here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah, and we've got one district that just banned the Bible.
Yeah, and that's a spiteful, they're trying to be cute. They took Representative Ivory's bill. Were you the House sponsor of that or a Senate sponsor?
No.
Okay. Who was? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Todd Weiler.
Todd Weiler. So here you have a bill that said you need to review your curriculum and have a very methodical way to do it. They cherry picked provisions in that bill, and they had someone complain about the Bible, and they didn't actually follow the statute,
right,
and the way they're supposed to. So they cherry pick different portions of it to make a political statement that if you want to even try to take this smut out of our schools in front of these kids, we're gonna put your Bible and we're gonna tell you that that's not age appropriate. And now I hear there's a complaint about the Book of Mormon. That's the next one coming. And those efforts aren't organic. There's no one concerned about those things. Those are tactics to keep it's smut in front of these children. That's what they want. And I can't, I think it's hard for me as a parent to understand why that would be good, how anyone would be comfortable with that. But that's the circumstances that we're being confronted with. And what I would tell you as a congressman, what I would do, I would never, not only would I not shy away from this issue, I would continue to put bright lights on this. I don't know that there's a bill necessarily that Congress could pass, but you need some strong voices in our Congress talking about these things that every single parent and grandparent is going to immediately identify with and know that we got to get involved in this. And this isn't okay. This isn't going to be all right.
Well, we're going to take a break,
Okay.
and then we'll come right back.
All right.
Hey, gang. For all things Utah politics, make sure you tune in to PoliticIt, the greatest podcast around, with your host, Senator John Johnson. We'll see you soon. Ciao, baby.
Welcome back to the PoliticIt. We've got Greg Hughes here, candidate for CD2.
Yep. Congressional District 2.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about ESG.
Yes.
And I guess we ought to explain that's environmental, social, and governance scores. And this is something that Fink at BlackRock, these big investors are actually putting that into the market, forcing that. I should really say forcing it into the market, right? So what do you think? Is that an issue that really needs to be dealt with at the federal level?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what's happened. I mentioned it in the last segment, but let me just, Senator, I fundamentally believe, and I think I'm watching in real time, that big government has merged with big business. And what I mean by that is these social scores, environmental, social, governance, they have nothing to do with profit and loss. They have nothing to do with what a business is meant to do. If you're a business, it used to be that you needed to have a bottom line. If it didn't make money, it didn't make sense. You work towards that. And the free market actually has lifted more people out of poverty than any government program, whether it's UN, federal, state, local, combined. The free market has brought individual liberty. They have walked away from that, okay? And what they're now telling businesses are you have to have certain standards, political standards, by the way, social agenda laden standards, or you won't get access to financial services or loans. You won't be able to have your company insured because we're going to really push on those insurance companies if you don't have a high social score to not insure you. We're watching this happen, and that does not have one touch on the free market. That is where you're seeing big business merge with the agenda, the political agenda, the social agenda of the left. And they're using the power of how big and large their businesses are and its influence to push a social agenda. They're not staying, in other words, they're not staying in their lane.
So how do we deal with that, though?
So I think, again, it's a complicated point, but I think we have to talk about it more often, because the one thing I know about ESG or any of these things, BlackRock, this big company that seems to own every other company, it doesn't represent me. It doesn't represent you. It doesn't represent everyday Utahns, everyday Americans who are just trying to make their way. And in a democratically elected republic, there's more of us than there are of them.
Right.
And you can't, just like Budweiser is feeling it right now. They went too far. And they're seeing this recoil by consumers, to the point where if you see people recoil from this social agenda, these social scores, and that's frankly why they make those decisions. This recoil, they would know that this wasn't the demographic, but they were trying to earn the scores so that they could be part of the club. I'm telling you that when the consumer reacts, and I'm not talking about bans, I'm just saying, everyday people connect with everyday companies, people that have your back. Let's just get back to, economics 101.
Yeah, one of the things the everyday people don't realize is BlackRock manages their retirement funds. So they're actually using the money of everyday people to go after everyday people. It's a bizarre.
It is, and I'm going to tell you that what I felt when I ran for governor, and I didn't win, but I tell you what, I came out of that a better person than I walked in. And I had served as a lawmaker for 16 years and Speaker of the House for 2 terms. But going to every single county and meeting just everyday people, I came out of that experience understanding that this federal government, particularly in Utah with our federal lands, I mean, it's one thing for us to say 66% of our land is federally controlled, but that's not 66% where you and I live, or where I live. But when you get to Kane County, that's 90%.
Right.
Where the federal government, they can't get fiber optics. They can't get fiber across that land. They can't get infrastructure. For this federal government is strangling the people of this state. They have, Senator.
Well, and most of it is in this district, isn't it?
It is. And I'm telling you, we have generations of ranchers and farmers and even multiple use on the lands of, recreation. The federal government, Biden's administration right now wants to put conservation easements behind current permits, land use permits, that generations of ranchers will be done. When the person who is the head of the family right now passes away, instead of it going to their family member and carrying on like it has through generations, it's over, you're out. And this is that's what's going on. You have that happening on many circumstances, but Chris Stewart's fighting this fight. I've been fighting this fight with our legislature for years now. We fought this with the national monuments and really seeing with President Trump, those scaled back, and then seeing Biden bring them right back. But we've been fighting these issues. I've been back to Washington, D.C. I have fought to explain the Western states' issues with the federal government and how from Washington, D.C., They are making land use decisions that are destroying families. Now, think about this. When you talk about the Wasatch Front and Salt Lake County and Davis County, I'd say growth is a big issue. I'd say quality of life is going down while the cost of living is going straight up. In the 2nd District, 13 counties, you might have Salt Lake County, a portion of Salt Lake County, a portion of Davis County, certainly Washington County growing. But then you have this other whole world in the other rural counties where their young people who need jobs, who want to start families, have to leave. They have to move away because they don't have industry where they've grown up. They don't have it. It's the federal government's taking it away from them in real time. So where do they go? They come to the places that are already so congested. And it's that itself is not a sustainable cycle.
So how have you connected to those issues, to those rural counties? How would you be a representative of that?
So I'm glad you asked. It's all infrastructure. Okay, when you see the state of Utah, much of what we can appreciate about how Utah has grown, you can stare at the Intercontinental Railroad. Okay, look at that Intercontinental Railroad. When you have that coming through, look at how that was able to empower this state in terms of people that moved here, the mining that they were able to then access because of the train infrastructure, rail infrastructure. Every coastal port on the western seaboard makes its way somehow through rail into Utah. Our rail system is elaborate. Why can't we capture cargo flow instead of just coming through this state, through our roads, I-15, I-80, I-70? Why not have you capture that instead of coming through and have it domicile here? Why can't we have manufacturing here? Why can't we have these companies that come to that build things and give these starving rural counties opportunity through our transportation infrastructure? That's something that I fought for when I was Speaker of the House. That's something I would fight for in Congress. Why does that benefit Davis County? You don't have the continued exodus of young people from counties that can't sustain themselves in terms of their young people, adding to the growth. There's actually in the 2nd District where you have the Wasatch Front, portions of the Wasatch Front County, and then Tooele off Wasatch Front, and then you go south, the west side of the state, all the way south. There is actually a closer connection than people realize. If they both succeed, it's working together. You see those communities start to grow or keep their young people so they can live there. It takes a lot of the pressure. It's like a relief valve in the more congested parts of our state. I got to tell you, Senator, we've been grappling with these issues quietly. I know you deal with these on that level of infrastructure all the time. Congress, it used to have a stronger role. It needs to step up and at least stop attacking these communities with federal lands and their new rules. I mean, when Clinton made the staircase Escalante, he promised, you're going to be able to drive on it. You're going to be, we want to protect pristine landscape, but we're not here to interrupt your community or change it. They're putting rules in real time right now into place that you won't be able to go anywhere near it. Everything that was promised in the 90s by then President Clinton is being violated and betrayed in real time today. Who knows it? Who knows that? We have got to get that word out. I know there are great conservatives in Congress. What can I do to help them understand this draconian heavy hand of the federal government that they frankly don't have in their state? We have it. And I think that's something that needs to be spoken about a lot more and something I would lean into if I had the opportunity.
Yeah, because you even after you get through all that rural, you end up at one of the fastest growing areas in Utah, right down in Washington.
So we mentioned Victor. Let me say who that is. That's
Okay.
Washington County Commissioner Victor Iverson. Washington County has 3 commissioners: Adam Snow, Commissioner Gil Almquist, and Commissioner Victor Iverson. Victor Iverson was my running mate when I ran for governor in 2020. That is a fast growing. They're closer to Clark County, Nevada, than they are Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City. So they got Las Vegas and Clark County that they're closer to, but they're here. They're not part of Nevada. They're part of our state, and there's this disconnect sometimes. Well, they have growth issues. They have water issues. They have issues that they can help sustain a growing population, and Iron County seeing the growth as well. But somebody has to connect the dots here, that this is one state and that we're all connected from there all the way up to here, to where we sit. We've got to make sure that the whole state is understanding how it grows together. 29 counties, 75% of the entire population lives in only 4 of 29 counties. And that is not sustainable. We've got to get that economic opportunity to the whole state so that we can grow in a way that doesn't harm our quality of life or our cost of living.
So how can you represent Washington County better than anybody else?
Well, I made my best case. First, we worked on those issues when I was the Speaker of the House on water issues, lands issues. And I did this even before I was Speaker in the legislature. But I was the only guy that ran for governor who chose an off-Wasatch Front running mate. So while every candidate that ran picked someone that was along the Wasatch Front, I saw this value, Senator, of an important part of our state and community who needed to be part of this race and part of this dialogue and part of the campaign and all the issues. And that's why I asked Commissioner Victor Iverson, Washington County Commissioner Victor Iverson, to run. So I think they've sensed, Washington County and the South, that I have been there by way of my public service. But even when I ran, I knew that there was a critical voice that had to be part of that race. And look, we won 10 counties. We won Washington County by 11 percentage points. And I think it's because of the question you asked. They felt like they had a champion. They had someone on their side. So I think the voters get me as a person. I think I'm wired for a place like Congress where it's a snake pit. And I think I have the mindset that I know what that is. I go in eyes wide open. So they understood me as voters, and I think I understand them. And I think I will tell you that there is a special connection that I've discovered from Southern Utah constituents, rural Utah, and blue collar America. I grew up in Pittsburgh. My family were union members and steel workers, and there's a blue collar ethic to life that I grew up around. And uniquely, I see a connection in terms of communities that they don't know about each other. They don't know how similar and straight talk. No, don't dress it up. If you're going to stab me in the chest, not the back. I'm going to tell you how I feel. And it's, all those qualities that I admire and that I want to emulate. I see that in the people of Utah so strong. And so I think that's one of the things that I think I'm a bit of a hybrid candidate where I've been, I've had success along the Wasatch Front. I've represented a district up here, but I've also represented the issues in Washington County and rural Utah. And so I think that I understand those issues well and can identify there. And then I can come up the state, get up here in the Wasatch Front and grapple with those issues as well. So I think I have that. And that's what I would like delegates and then ultimately voters to really weigh in their member of Congress. Do they have that perspective, that empathy for their issues and their communities? And that's what I think I offer.
One thing I'm going to miss, Wingback Wednesday.
Wingman Wednesday.
Wingman.
I'll tell you, Rod Arquette, he's become a dear friend of mine. And that KNRS show, I'm going to, if I can, brag a little bit. KNRS highest rated rated station in Wasatch Front. Some people think it might be another station.
Right.
But it's KNRS. And Rod is they do a lot of the syndicated shows of Glenn Beck, and they have Sean Hannity and the Buck Travis, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton show. He's the local voice. And that drive time, 4 to 10, it's again, the ratings are unmatched in terms of people that listen. This is what tells you that Utah is red, that it's a conservative, common sense state and community that show does so well. So he's been very
funny.
nice.
It's funny how we allow the minority in the state to control the dialogue.
It's true, and I'll tell you, they leave Utahns with this perception that maybe I'm by myself, maybe I'm alone, maybe the way I thought everything was so common sense, maybe it's not. Go listen to Rod Arquette's show. Go listen to the issues he's bringing up. And so he used to invite me on Wednesdays, and we could co-host for that time. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I think we need thought leaders as much as we need good public servants. We need people that can put in context what it is that you're fighting for. Senator, you are someone that takes criticism. I mean, and that's social proofing for me, by the way. If you're getting criticized by this media, it means it's good because it means you're doing something. It means that you're making a difference. The media is only ready to attack someone that's making a real difference. If the status quo is working and you're not changing it, they'll leave you alone. So I've seen that you take on those fights. It's important to have thought leaders in our community like Rod Arquette, that can really put context to that so that the listeners know, hey, we're not alone. They're fighting for us. They're fighting for the issues that we.
One great thing about your participation there, though, is I think people who listen to that show have learned that you really do understand the issues.
Well,
I mean, you can talk about any issue that comes up, and it's just it's so evident
Well,
with the way you speak that you've got a command of that.
well, thank you. I'm grateful that, I'm not self-aware. I have no idea whether what I share communicates or not, but I'll tell you this. For the same reason that I love being on that program with Rod, and the same reason I like delving into those issues, it's really why when this vacancy came out of nowhere and nobody was planning for it, and now Congress is left with only a 4-member majority. Republicans are left in Congress with only a 4-member majority instead of 5. And that was already razor's thin. And after September 15th, Utah 25% of its representation in Congress will be absent. That can't stand. So this all came so fast. For the same reasons I participate on that show and care about those issues and want to talk about them or share perspective on them, is why I've decided to run. Because those same issues, and you won't fill Chris Stewart's shoes, but we can't lose ground. We can't go the other way. You have to be effective. I think hopefully I bring some of that with my legislative experience where I could be effective quickly.
Yeah. So we're out of time,
Okay.
but look into that camera over there and make one last pitch.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's it's a very unique race in terms of a vacancy in Congress. So it'll be a special election. There's going to be a Republican and I'm sure a Democrat convention. The Republican convention is on June 24th. It'll be in Delta, in Millard County at Delta High School. And it's whoever comes out of that convention, if there are signature gatherer candidates, and I believe there's a couple that would look to be on the primary ballot, that primary will be the day after Labor Day on September 5th. So that's a very quick timeline. And then the winner of the Republican primary would face a general election. By the way, this is as per our U.S. Constitution, on November 21st, which is the week of Thanksgiving, but the municipal races will be that same week. But November 21st would be the general election for the 2nd Congressional District's special vacancy general election. So those are the time periods. And as I go to each step, I'm not getting signatures. I want the delegates to be the jurors. If I'm selected in that convention, you'll see me in a primary. And if you see me in a primary, I'm going to be fighting for your vote and could use your support. And again, we're in tough times. And I've said before, tough times don't last, tough people do. Utah's tough, and I would work to represent that in our U.S. Congress.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very good, Greg Hughes. We'll see you guys next week.